buy a couple of PDFs or digital editions, so you can have. But there are two studies I want to look closely, and one is Hogan, and the other is David Dockley's 2003 study. Okay, let's look at Hogan first. What they did, they looked at three factors, and I think that was a great clarity that they brought to this derailment literature. And they said, okay, so there could be certain derailers which come in if you move away from others. So moving away derailers, and we will look at that in a moment. And there are other derailers which you move against others. And there are other derailers which happen when you move towards others, right? So let's look at, so there are a total 11 derailers. So the first, which I have marked in red, the first 5 are when you move towards, when you move away from people, okay? So you are excitable, you are skeptical, you are cautious, you are reserved, and you are leisure. And the second category, which I have marked in some sort of blue, it has these 4 derailers. So essentially you are bold, overly self-confident, super confident, you are mischievous, you are colorful, you are imaginative. So these are the derailers when you move against people, which means that there's a space that you fight for with them. And the last 2, diligent and dutiful. And these are derailers when you move towards people, which means you want to please people, you want to make them happy. So these are those things when they come. Okay. So I need to move on. There's also this. Okay. So the first 5, moving away from people. So you manage your anxiety by maintaining distance and pushing others away. So that's your stress mechanism, coping mechanism. The second one, moving against people, you manage your anxiety by manipulating or controlling others. And finally, you manage your anxiety by building alliances with others, yeah, being with nice guy, yeah, something like that. And there's also another research which I didn't include in this is flight and fight responses. So there are certain derailers which happen when you want to fly, want to run away from the situation, and there are certain derailers which come when you want to fight, when you want to stay. Now, we'll come to David Dockley in a minute, where I'll spend a bit more time. Now, Hogan said in the toxic triangle, derail leader aspect, because he or she is only one variable. So in this triangle, which they call the toxic triangle, there are 2 other variables as well. So your followers and also your context, your environments. So which means if there's an instability in your environment, or if the culture doesn't allow you to be a straight talker or a forthright individual, it may work against you. Or if you are too mistrusting in a trusting culture, or too trusting in a mistrust or low trust culture, that could also become. Similarly, followers, they also have their manipulative needs. So I think they bring this destruction together. So all these things. So it's kind of more like a vicious cycle as opposed to a virtuous cycle in which probably everything will work fine. Okay. So let's move now to David Dockley. Why CEOs fail? Because my area is CEO, so I train CEOs and I also coach them. And since this book came in 2003, I have been heavily using these 11 derailers that David Dockley found. So let's, if you want, we can spend more time. If you want, I can stop here and we can talk about during question and answers. But these are 11 which I really found very, very useful. Okay, for example, number 1, arrogance. Now, in our context, and when I say in our context, which means Asian or subcontinent or Arab cultures, we think arrogance is when you are rude. That's not arrogance. Yeah, that's actually your rude behavior. Arrogance is when you believe in what you say, when you believe that's the only solution, when you believe that your opinion is the final one. You have kind of monopoly on wisdom or monopoly on solutions, or when you have the solution and all other solutions are probably unacceptable. And we have seen leaders talking like this in their senior management teams. And stay in that area. So I think I can hear some sound. Okay, no problem. All right. Number 5, habitual distrust. So you generally focus on the negatives. No, this person cannot be given this assignment. We can't go in that market. This team is not ready yet. That kind. Aloofness. So we have seen this aloofness and arrogance recurring probably in all studies. So you are disengaged, disconnected. You spend more time at your desktop or your workspace. You don't meet people. And when the customers comes, you pass on to probably other people while you want to finish your own deadlines, whatever. So the work, in quote unquote, the work becomes your escape point, and you want to stay away from people. Eccentricity, you just want to be different for the sake of it. It could be interesting, it could be in how you see, how you analyze things. Yeah. And number 10, perfectionism. And this is a real criminal derailer, because when I work with these highly capable individuals who have been extremely successful, and they have run hyper growth organizations, and they think that it's their perfectionism and it's their quality consciousness and it's their detail orientation that has brought them this. Might have, but as one of my mentor, Marshall Goldsmith from Canada, he recently wrote a book. It's not really recent, 2007 book. He said, what has brought you here won't take you there. So which means you might have, with these perfectionism, for example, you might have come here, but it won't take you there, because then it may become a derailer. And finally, eagerness to please, particularly when you want to please your stakeholder and the shareholder, and they are not saying same things. You have some sense of sanity, but you can't really contest because you are really afraid of them and you want to be liked, or you want to please them. Okay, so these are some of those 11 derailers which Dr. Rich has studied. Okay, let's also look at okay, so because there's also a question, I'm sure it will come in the question answer session, that what is a healthy self-esteem, or and what is that takes it to the derailment part. So I've given this example taken from Lubit 2005 study. An example, self-confidence. So healthy self-esteem would be high self-confidence, but you're also in touch with reality. And as opposed to a derailer would be arrogant, self-absorbed, narcissistic. So you stop other people's contributions, you ignore them. And another example, desire for power, which is a legitimate desire, because all leaders, they are there because of this power, because of this wealth or status or this consciousness for admiration. So that's why they are in the leadership space, no other reasons. But a healthy and appropriate dose is good, and they also make sure that what they achieve is through some principles, through some value. It's a value-based leadership, and they also take care of their morality, and they don't sacrifice relationships in that process. But in the derailment part, it goes out of hand. You become too ambitious as opposed to, say, appropriately ambitious. You become too ambitious, destructively ambitious. Okay, and you probably remove all inhibitions to achieve this. Okay. So a couple of last questions. What could trigger derailers? There could be many things, but most studies would revolve around, it could be situational. So a situation that deals with you, which means you get a new project, you get a more complex target, there's a merger and acquisition, there is a new competitor, so something like that. So this will add pressure and stress, and you might go into your fallback flight or fight response. It could also be a contextual. So you worked very fine in, say, in Medina, but you were sent to Germany, yeah, Berlin or Munich or Frankfurt, and context becomes different, and you have difficulty. Or similarly, vice versa. A Frankfurt-based executive, he comes to Karachi, and he finds altogether different Japanese. So you are working in somewhere in Japan, and you are moved elsewhere in a geography, and you see that derailment comes in. Also internal triggers, your own personality, because maybe the foundation was not right when you were growing up. Maybe you didn't get sufficient dose of self-esteem or sufficient care or love, whatever. So maybe there's a disorder that has, so whether it's attention deficit disorder or OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. So there's an issue that has come. So maybe in earlier roles, you had dealt with this fine because there was not sufficient pressure or stress, but now it has. So those internal triggers also can move and bring in derailers. I also want to use this word blind spots because we can identify very, very early on, but we don't. We ignore them, and that's what we call it a blind spot. For example, I use a psychometric instrument which is called TMP, Team Management Profile, and I got my accreditation in Australia, 2005. So it looks at your leadership strengths, it also looks at your leadership weaknesses, but it also highlights a few blind spots, which you might think were your strengths. And blind spot is not just weakness, it could also be about your strength. For example, you never knew that I had this strength. I can deal with an unexpected scale, for example. But those blind spot assessment or study, you can find out. So I'm using this blind spot for both sides, both the weakness part as well as your strength part. Okay, so how you prevent derailers? I think my first line would be seek feedback. Seek feedback early and seek feedback quite often. And I also see those leaders who are open to feedback, because there's also this paradox which I see. Sometimes because coaching is very expensive, so these CEOs, they pay me my huge fee. They get my coaching, but then they don't accept that feedback, because that clashes and contrasts with their existing opinion about themselves or opinion of others whom they have trusted in the past, maybe colleagues or maybe a fellow golfer, something like that. Okay. So I think an essential element of feedback is that you analyze that feedback when it comes. So you can accept parts of that, you can dismiss parts of that, which means throw away, trash it. But you can also, maybe you can also flag certain feedback and say, okay, I'll find out more about that from others. Yeah. So if Wali is saying this, let me also highlight, speak to a few other coaches maybe, or maybe a few other colleagues or my peers. So two things, seek feedback early and seek feedback often from peers, team members, not just bosses, because bosses are there to give feedback. But also, I can see there's a chat box, so let me see where we are, 5 minutes, okay. I'll do that, thank you. Okay. Also seek feedback from trusted friends whom you trust, and they have nothing to gain or lose from you, so probably they don't have a stake. Also spouses. I think this is an underplayed area, ignored area. But spouses, they can actually give you very, very useful feedback. So not at that time, which means you block that time, say, okay, we will keep our other relationship issues on the side, but let me also only talk about my leadership side, for example, or my decision making, or my caution, or how I deal with people, yeah, something like that. Also other family members, okay. So that's one, preventing your derailer. The other one is online assessments like Hogan, like Talent Q, which is Miles' coaching partner. Seek a 360-degree feedback, multi-data, so within also seek from your customers. Get coaching. So seek a coach who can tell you or guide you, or whatever the language, appropriate language could be, and they guide you towards what's happening and how you can spot it. And if probably these things are not really working, then also you need to check your role fit, or maybe the context fit, whether I'm working in the right role, or whether I'm working in the right context or organization. So you can also see, which means question that as well. Okay, so